Whew. Sorry, folks. This has been an absolute storm of technical issues on my end. I apologize to those of you viewing at home and to our esteemed guest, Joshua Vela Fonseca, who has given up his time and energy to join us today. So thank you so much for that. For those of you tuning in, we're just going to start this thing over and see if we can't run this all the way through without running into any more problems. So my name is Aaron Provencio. I am a member of the communications team here at Galapagos Conservancy. This is Field Transmissions, which is an opportunity for us to sit down virtually live with members of the Galapagos Conservancy team and overall conservation community that we work with both stateside and, of course, down in the islands, which brings me to our guest, Joshua Vela Fonseca. If you have been a fan of us for a while, a follower, a supporter, or if you follow us on any of our social medias, chances are you have seen you're probably familiar with Josh, or you've at least seen his work. He's a contributing photographer and videographer to not only us, but many people who are interested in Galapagos, and we'll go on and talk about all the different things that he's involved in eventually. But before I go on, I should also mention that we have a live stream moderator in the chat, so if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put those in the comments while we are talking. And then if you have any questions for Josh directly, hopefully, all time considering, because we are running a little bit late, we will be able to ask him those towards the end of the program. But without further ado, Josh, please go ahead and tell the folks at home about yourself.
Hello there, Aaron. Thanks for having me. My name is Joshua Vela. I'm a visual artist and a videographer. I grew up here in the Galapagos Islands, and I had to leave when I was like 17 maybe, and I chose to study visual arts in Quito because there aren't many options here in the Galapagos. That's true for many of my contemporaries. So I studied visual arts, and soon after I had to return, right? This is a paradise after all. And I work as an intern with the Charles Darwin Foundation, and then Limblad Expeditions and National Geographic heard of me, and they offered me a position as a video chronicler, and it's been 3 years now working with them. I usually spend 5 to 6 months on board, and then I have half of the year for me. During that time, I've been lucky to keep working with the Charles Darwin Foundation and also the Galapagos Conservancy, BBC, and other productions. It's been great.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for again sticking with me through all of these technical difficulties that we have been experiencing so far. But it looks like we are good to go now. So let's just keep this thing rolling. Josh, I guess the big question that I know I'm wondering and that people at home are probably wondering is, when did you first begin taking an interest in photography, videography?
You know, sometimes I think that... Oh, sorry.
No, please, go for it.
I'm getting a bit of a lag, but well, I just think that sometimes I think that I decided to study visual arts just so my parents will buy me a camera. I've been always photographing with cell phone and making little videos, taking pictures of my friends. And so in college, I had the opportunity to thoroughly study photography. I took several semesters of different classes. And I guess it all started with portraits of people. And so every time that I returned to the Galapagos for holidays, I was kind of doing the same with animals. And I think that's still true. If you see my pictures, I think I see animals as you know, as people sometimes. I think I tend to humanize them. I don't look like weird actions or crazy behaviors. Just sometimes I want the creature to look at me, and I think that's fantastic. It's a true connection for me. I've always been a fan of David Attenborough as well, and so being in the Galapagos is the easiest way to become a wildlife photographer and videographer.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. I can definitely relate to trying to take pictures on your phone and make things look good, but eventually you just do need to graduate to that camera, which you have done in a splendid fashion. As the presentation goes on, I will be flashing up photography on the screen for those of you watching at home, and everything that you see today is a product of our very own Joshua right here. So, and if you're a fan of his, we'll talk about a little bit later how you can track him down online to view more of his stuff. But can you go ahead and just tell us about, you've expressed this interest in visual arts and photography and wildlife as people, as you mentioned, but what was your first trip to the field like?
Mm-hmm. That was during my time as an intern with the Charles Darwin Foundation, and it was with Ainhoa Nieto. She's a veterinarian, and she was studying the movement of giant tortoises. So they invited me to Alcedo. I didn't really have experience, or I didn't know what should I expect, and it was kind of a pain, to be honest. It's a 10-hour hike, and I was so excited that I brought with me a ton of lenses and cameras and tripods. So I still remember the leg pain when I climbed at it. But no, it's a magical place, I think. Alcedo is spectacular. I still think that I've taken a few of my best pictures there, and yeah, it was wonderful, really, like to be connected with nature and to see pristine places. I think that's the true Galapagos.
And for those of you viewing at home, the images I've been putting up are of Alcedo Volcano, which is one of our research sites as well here at Galapagos Conservancy. It's an important site of conservation for many species of the archipelago, but especially those iconic giant tortoises. And as Josh mentioned, it is one of those kind of the true wilderness, the true wild of Galapagos that a lot of people don't necessarily get the option to see. So it's people like Joshua whose jobs are so important to bring these sites to us, and obviously not have to lug all of the equipment up and down the volcano. So we very much appreciate Josh doing that as well. Now let's hone in a little bit. So you've talked about your time with Charles Darwin Foundation. You've talked about the things you've done there, but can you talk a little bit about how long you've been working with us here at Galapagos Conservancy and exactly what you've participated with our team?
So the first time that I participated with Galapagos Conservancy was actually for a logo. I did the Giant Tortoise Restoration Initiative one. It's now called Iniciativa Galapagos. That was in 2018. And then the next 4 trips that I've done with Galapagos Conservancy was actually this year. I always known Huacho. He's an icon here in the Galapagos. His work is incredible. He's done so much for the islands, and I always wanted to work with him. And so my first one, it was a second trip to Alcedo. My second one, it was in January 2021, this year, and it was a completely different experience. Another season. That was just after the pandemic, so I wasn't really I wasn't like in my fittest version. So I unfortunately had 2 knees injuries, but I had to recover after that. And Wacho loved what I did there. I did a video that I think you've seen it, and several pictures. But yeah, that was incredible. One thing that I really like about Galapagos Conservancy that I think is completely different for anything I've seen before is that you have fewer projects, but are massive. Like you really spend all your efforts in doing one thing right, and I think I love that. After that, usually those trips are like with 20 people or more, so I think that's incredible. And then the next one was in April, Fernandina, looking for a mate for Fernanda, the extinct Fernandina giant tortoise. And then in June, in Española, we're counting albatrosses and giant tortoises and cactus as well. And then the last one was in August. That was Wolf Volcano. And as you know, that's an incredible place. That's where the Pink Land Iguana lives. and I was like really honored to be there. I think a handful of people have seen the land iguana, and it was really, really cool.
Yeah, and so as Joshua mentioned, if you have been following on our social medias, on our website, the pictures and videos that have come back from Española, from Alcedo, from Wolf Volcano with the Pink Land Iguanas, many of those are Joshua's artwork, and many of the videos as well have been produced on Joshua's end. So naturally, we appreciate that because it gives our social media a much needed boost. Obviously, with all this beautiful content, it helps me because I don't have to make as many videos. And there's, he does an incredible job of sharing those with you. And it also, again, helps us advertise our really, really important work to the rest of the world. And so my follow-up question for that, Josh, is, I guess, what are the day-to-days of an expedition like? You've already talked about the heavy gear and the burning legs, but what is it like to be involved in this sort of science?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there's a lot of walking involved in there, usually 5 to 10 hours hike, carrying all you need, especially water. Water is really, really important. And I think that for me, music is also very, very important. And then I think the first thing that you have to do is finding a bed. Sometimes you have to choose the most comfortable rock, but it's part of the experience, of course. Also, there's a lot of eating involved because you need a lot of energy, right, to work. But it's all worth it. I can assure you that. And well, being a vegetarian for me, it's been also kind of difficult, I have to fill myself with beans and rice, but that's okay. As I said, it's all worth it. And well, day to day, like you usually start with the sun. As soon as there's some light, then you start walking. And depending on what you do, sometimes you have to leave the camp like an hour or two hour hike from the camp. And it's usually counting with Galápagos Conservancy. They do a lot of research in the field. So there's a lot of counting involved. But yeah, I think that the most important thing is to hear what the park rangers say. They have a lot of experience. I feel like a sponge when I'm with them. Like I try to absorb everything they're saying. It's really fantastic. I would really like to make a book or something about them in the future.
And you mentioned that there's kind of, it's like being a sponge, like just absorbing as much as you can while you're around the rangers and the scientists and the researchers who are part of these different expeditions. What does it feel like as somebody who, as you said, you care about wildlife, you're excited to be in these wild places. What does it feel like to be so far away from humanity and the more kind of touristy, developed parts of the archipelago, and still be kind of on the cutting edge of scientific research? I mean, as you said about the pink land iguana, which I'll put up a picture of in just a second, you're one of the only people ever in the history of the world to see these iguanas in real life. I mean, what does that feel like to be a part of?
Is overwhelming, really. It's incredible to see those creatures. One thing is to see pictures and imagine how they are, but there are 4 kind of iguanas and all of them are completely different. You cannot compare one with the other. I think that pink land iguanas are really, really strong creatures. They are huge. Well, we haven't seen any young ones, but that's why they are all huge. But it's still incredible. Like also, I think the color is beautiful, and I think that each one of them have a personality. I could spend hours looking at them. It's incredible, and being right there on the field, I think it's a well-needed disconnection. We're so used to be on offices and cars and in cities that we oftentimes forget how is it to be in nature and be surrounded with with these creatures, I think is phenomenal. As I said, I think that's the true Galapagos, and it's also you create a lot of bonds. Like I think park rangers see themselves as brothers, scientists. You can see how much they love what they are doing. That's why they need to, or they are looking to understand all of it, is because they really love what they are doing, and they want to protect it, right? I think that's the most important aspect of these trips. I think that when I'm looking for places to travel, I no longer look for cities. I tend to look for natural spaces, and I think that's you start to develop that kind of taste.
Well, I think I might ask the hardest question of the day, which is if you had to pick one, and maybe there's no right answer to this, but if you had to pick one, which do you think is your favorite expedition you've been involved in so far?
Well, I think that the Wolf Volcano one was really, really special for all the things that I mentioned. To see these ancient creatures just a few feet away is really incredible. To see the clouds, it's the highest point of the Galapagos, so there is the feeling that you've reached the highest point, that both literally and figuratively. But yeah, it's incredible. I would really like to return though, because I just spent there 5 days. It was supposed to be 10, but the park changed some dates and I had to return. But man, that's my best 5 days in the Galapagos for sure.
Yeah, I remember when you all came back from that expedition, and we started getting the pictures from you and from Jorge. It's unbelievable. It looks like you were saying, like it's almost prehistoric. Like me sitting, which for those of you viewers at home, you've probably figured out I'm not actually down in Galapagos. Big secret there. It's incredible looking, and it feels like such a privilege to be able to experience that sights, those experiences through you vicariously, and I guess by extension that's kind of what this program is to hear the details and to hear what it's like to be a part of that. So let's zoom in a little bit on the Wolf Volcano expedition, because you've been talking about it so much, and it was such a crowd favorite in the past few months this fall with the Pink Land Iguana population census. What was it like up there? I mean, how were the conditions? Was it wet? Was it windy? Was it miserable? How was it?
Before going, I heard that that's the toughest hike of all. And I knew from the Alcero hike that I really needed to be prepared for this one. And so I remember training every day. For 2 months I did some CrossFit workouts. I had to cancel a trip with Lindblad because of this. So I really wanted to go. And as I mentioned, the park had to move some dates, so I was supposed to go 10 days. So I was a bit stressed about the trip because I had so little time. And as I said before, also I think that hearing what the park rangers are saying and their experiences is very helpful. So I remember that the first land iguana that we saw, it was because I was thinking about what they all said every day. Like they have this very delicate skin, right? They don't have any pigments. You can see the blood. That's why they seem to be pink. It's actually their blood. So they don't tend to stay in the sun for long, and they really like the sunsets and the sunrises, right? So it was around 5 o'clock when I just was exploring near the camp, and I got to see the first Pink Land Iguana of the trip. I immediately called the park rangers, and that for me was it. Like it was all worth it. Another thing that I really like about that hike is that because it's the highest point of the Galapagos, you get to see a lot of the micro ecosystems there are, like the intertidal, the coastal, the arid zone, the transition zone, and you end up in the Pampa. So it's like a little war, right? I wish I had more time, but who knows, maybe I'll return soon.
Well, I know that our viewers at home and our followers on Instagram would love to have you return up there again, because the photos and the videos you were able to bring back down from that expedition are incredible. And additionally, it should be mentioned, the research and the population census, first of its kind, 211 pink land iguanas left on the planet, are up on this very specific habitat, miles and miles, well, not miles, that's a exaggeration, but very high up on these volcanoes, and that's the only place that they can be found. And so these expeditions that we're doing, I mean, as Josh mentioned, they're not just fun hikes through the volcanoes and through Galapagos. They're grueling, intense, multiple day expeditions to do really, really important conservation science for the sake of the preservation of Galapagos species and the ecosystems on which they live. Would you mind telling our viewers a little bit at home what the other rangers are carrying on their back? I mean, what's the type of gear that they need for the Wolf Volcano expedition in particular?
So they have, of course, GPS. They use their tents. They use all the equipment necessary to weigh them, to take samples of them. They usually have to carry also, their food, machetes, field stuff, and that's why they also need porters, right? So they hire these people, they are the Galapagos Sherpas. They really, really know the field as well, and they have to deliver or walk every day to the coast and bring stuff. It's a really, really tough work, but is as I mentioned, is very, very important as well.
Now, when we are talking and planning this discussion, you described yourself, and we got into this discussion about wildlife and science storytelling, and you identify yourself as a storyteller through the visual arts, but obviously through any sort of means that you can get your hands on, because as it is clear to me, and I'm sure it's clear to the viewers at home, this is a topic that means a lot to you, that you cherish and feel very passionately about your opportunity and your role as a storyteller, as a representative for the Galapagos Archipelago and its wildlife and its wild places. So can you talk a little bit about what you think, why do you believe that being a storyteller, especially visual, is so important, and specifically, how can art explain what words can't?
Mm-hmm. So, well, if you really think about it, I think that history is just a bunch of stories. At the beginning, they were written on caves. Now I think it's being written differently, and we're living on a world filled with images. I think that maybe historians in the future will have to dig Instagram and Reddit to write it, right? And so I think we're more connected than ever, and we need these compelling stories to really try to change the world. We really need. We don't have much time. I think we are having a lot of crises. As you said, there is a lot of emotions going on a field trip. There is this sense of discovery. We're really happy to see these creatures, but we also hear a lot of bad news. There's not many iguanas. They face a lot of threats that unfortunately we did in the past. So I think that's why it is important to make sense of these images, of these videos, to try to tell a story so that we can convince others, to protect our world, basically.
And it is great that that this is kind of where we have reached in the presentation, because we actually just got a question from one of the viewers about this kind of topic specifically. So I know we're going to push these to the end, but this one is just so perfect for the topic we're on right now. This is from Jim Greenway. What advice do you have for photographers visiting the islands as part of a tour? Specifically recommendations for equipment, care of equipment in that harsh kind of environment.
Well, you know, I've been talking about the pain of walking with a lot of stuff or everything that you have to carry, right? So look, this one has been with me for a long time. This is a 200 to 600 and it is a pain. I don't recommend it really. So one thing that I've learned during the field expeditions is that you really want to travel and to be ready for anything, right? In Galapagos, everything is, there is an abundance of life. So you have a splits of seconds to be ready, to take pictures, to take videos, and to have a small equipment will help you with that, right? So I only use 2 lenses and a mirrorless camera, the one that I'm using it right now for this live stream. So the one that I really recommend is this 20 millimeters. It's perfect. It's a 1.8, so it's perfect for gimbal, for low light, for astrophotography. And I have also this 24 to 240, which is like the jack of all trades. It's 240. I think it's more than enough in the Galapagos. You have everything so close that you really don't need much reach. And you know, it's kind of small compared to the 600. I can only use this one and I'll be fine. So yeah, that's my advice to you. Travel light.
Travel light. Yeah, I think I'm sure that's a great piece of advice. Hopefully that Jim will take that to heart when he heads down to the islands eventually. So back to our questions. What are some, I guess this kind of goes along with what we were talking about as well, but you know, not necessarily just from the photography angle, but what are some, as an experienced wildlife and science storyteller, what are some tips and tricks that you can recommend for people who are trying to do the same things that you do?
Once a friend told me that usually in order to make documentaries, you need to lie in order to tell the truth. So, you know, if you're working with a park ranger, don't be afraid to tell him, you know, can you repeat that you are doing? Or can you try to not look at the camera? Or can you walk slowly? Of course, you can't speak with animals, but you can use, I don't know, like 2 different iguanas to make them look like one. If you're trying to, for example, like, you know, we were talking about this VVC documentary on Planet Earth about this iguana escaping from a snake, and that was probably 5 different iguanas, and just one made it. So, you know, you have to be a little bit creative, try to use light, moment, and composition as best as you can, and I think you'll be fine.
And so for those of you watching at home, I'm just cycling through some of Joshua's pictures as he's talking. And I don't know about you, but I just think this stuff is incredible. When we were planning on doing this conversation, I spent 20 minutes just going through these pictures and just admiring just the beauty of all of these organisms. But the I don't know even how to call it, because is it, and this is kind of an off the script question, so I apologize for that, but is it chance when you're catching these animals in these positions with these perfect kind of moments of movement or stillness? Like, as a wildlife photographer, especially like you said, as in Galapagos with so much life and action and movement, how do you set yourself up for success to get these types of photos?
So animals here in the Galapagos are known because they are ecologically naive. And there aren't many predators here. and so they are really not afraid of other animals. If you go to a pristine place, they will run, of course. The pink iguanas are like crazy difficult to catch, but if you give them some time, they'll get used to it, and they just don't care about us. They know that we are not a threat. Well, at least not the tourist and scientist. And it's so easy to take photographs here in the Galapagos of those creatures, especially in the touristic places. They are really used to seeing people. I think it's way better than a zoo because they are free. They choose to be there.
And so we mentioned it a little bit earlier as we were talking about the BBC documentary about the iguana running from the snakes, which, if you haven't seen it, is a bananas video segment. As Joshua mentioned, it's likely some clever editing to make it seem a little bit more like a narrative than it necessarily is. But it's an incredible piece of footage to watch an iguana run from these snakes. But you yourself have also been involved in the production of a documentary like this. You recently were involved in some filming for the television program documentary Eden Untamed, correct?
Yes, Eden Untamed Planet.
Eden Untamed Planet. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that process was like, what you were involved in, and how that whole thing went?
Sure. So I was contacted. Ainhoa Nieto, a scientist, recommended me. So they were, of course, asking for reels, for CVs, for proof that I can make decent films. And I was really lucky to be invited to one of their expeditions in Fernandina, Cabo Douglas. That's where the segment, the one with the iguanas and the snake, took place. But we were now filming the nesting of the marine iguanas, and how they forage, and their everyday life is incredible. By the way, I think it's still, you can watch it on AMC Plus, and I don't know if the BBC has a platform for that, but definitely AMC Plus. So I was hired as a time lapser and drone operator. You can see maybe, maybe 60% of aerial footage was taken by me. Maybe less, I don't know, but a great percentage of them. And it was a dream come true for me. As I mentioned, I'm a huge fan of David Attenborough, and I'm still in contact with them. They take me in consideration for future projects, which is amazing. I was like a V camera operator, I guess, but who knows? Sometimes in the future, I will be a main cinematographer. Who knows?
And for those of you, again, watching at home, I've been putting up some stills, some photographs from that filming of those segments. And unfortunately, I was going to show a trailer for that documentary, but we had some issues with that. Didn't want to get copyright striked. So instead, I'm showing you some of Joshua's favorite pictures. But yeah, I did want to say that if you do want to check out the documentary, it is available to watch in the US. You can find it on bbcamerica.com, bbcearth.com. It's also on Amazon, YouTube TV, DirecTV. So there are all sorts of different ways to track that down here in the States, and I would highly recommend it. If you're a fan of Galapagos, which I'm assuming if you're here watching this, you probably are, then it's definitely worth looking into that documentary series. Josh, can you repeat the name of it again, please?
It is called Eden Untamed Planet, and the chapter is Galapagos Isles.
Eden Untamed Planet, Galapagos Isles chapter. So perfect there.
I think it's the fourth. Yeah.
Okay. Chapter number 4, definitely worth checking out. Look it up. There's a lot of ways. Just type it in on Google. There's a lot of ways to watch it in the U.S. Unfortunately, we just can't do it here. So definitely check it out and look into that. Now, Josh, I think we are coming to the end of our discussion here. We had a lot of good points that we've kind of covered, and just sort of like what your experiences are as a storyteller. But I guess culminatively, and this is also kind of an off the script conversation piece, but I think it's worth mentioning. Why does this all matter to you so much? What is it that, being a storyteller for Galapagos and for the wildlife, why is it such an important, why have you decided to dedicate your life to the craft of telling the world about Galapagos?
So, growing up here, I think you create a really strong bond with nature, and how not to. We are surrounded by it, and we can't escape. This is an island, so you see different ecosystem. You interact with different animals. It's really a unique place, and when you hear that is being in threat, the first instinct you have is to protect it by all means. And I don't really think I choose it. I think everyone here agrees with me that we need to protect it. I think is just natural. It's the thing that I had to do. If I wouldn't be a videographer, I would be a biologist or a scientist or another thing. I don't know. But I think nature plays a very important role in the life of everyone living here. So, and I think that's what is needed everywhere, to try to be more connected with nature. And as I said, it's a grateful thing to be doing what I do, and to be working with people like you guys. Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Well, we are certainly thrilled to be able to work with you too. I can't say enough how grateful that we all are for you, being able to bring us closer to Galapagos than I feel like we can really be. I mean, through your art, through your photography, through your videography, through your video production, so many of us are able to experience Galapagos for what it is, and ultimately be reinvigorated in our fight to help protect it, to help protect the Pink Land Iguana and the Española Waved Albatrosses, the critically endangered albatrosses, and the giant tortoises of those islands. So much of what you do allows so many of us and our supporters and followers to be able to connect further and deeper with these species and these ecosystems and these habitats, and re-interest us in that fight to help preserve them moving forward. So we're going to go back to the chat real quick to see if there are any questions. We do have one here. This is an interesting one. I'll be curious to hear what your answer is from this one. So as we know, the Galapagos Islands are a volcanic archipelago formed through tectonic, or the movement of magma from the seafloor of the Pacific Ocean. Lisa Schaftel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, was curious if the lava is dangerous to walk
on. Well, I haven't heard of anyone walking on fresh lava. Definitely, we have a lot of it, but it's cold, so it's already cold. It's dry, and so you can walk with fresh lava, like maybe when it reaches a certain temperature. But we don't have permanent lava flows like I think Hawaii has. But yeah, maybe we see an eruption maybe once every 2 years, and we all really want to take pictures and to be there. All the guides are crazy when they hear there is an eruption. I've seen 2, but very, very far away. But if I get to see lava from a few feet, I'll try to walk and I'll let you know.
All right. Well, certainly don't go putting your feet on hot lava. I don't know what kind of boots you're using, but I don't know if they're that thick to be able to walk on hot lava. But yeah, as Josh mentioned, the volcanoes, Alcedo, Wolf, these aren't live volcanoes to speak, right?
What do you mean? Active? They are active. They are
They
very,
are
very
active.
active.
Okay, very, very
Yeah.
active.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
when you're
especially
on,
Wolf Volcano.
gotcha. Okay. Well then, maybe we do have to watch out for some lava. Well, Lisa, if we do end up sending Joshua down to some active lava flows and he burns through his shoes, we'll be sure to send you the bill. So be paying attention in your mail for that. Let me see if we have any other questions there. It doesn't look like it. So we are coming down to the end of our presentation. Josh, where can people find you on the internet? How can they track down more of your work?
Well, I have my website, joshuavela.com, but really the place where I post the most is Instagram. So that's at joshuavelaf. And yeah, I try to be active there. So you'll see oftentimes me posting reels and stories.
You can also keep an eye on our Instagram, Galapagos Conservancy, because we are constantly posting Joshua's work. I'm a big fan of his, so chances are if you go back and look at our Instagram feed, you're going to notice a lot of Joshua tagged in our posts. But yeah, follow him on Instagram if you're interested in Galapagos wildlife. His Instagram tag is right down there at Joshua Vela F, JOSHUAVELAF on Instagram. Definitely check him out. Again, go check out the BBC documentary Eden Untamed, Chapter 4, hopefully, Galapagos. It's available on all sorts of streaming platforms in the US, so definitely check that out as well. And additionally, as we've been talking about this entire presentation, what Joshua does is brings us closer to the conservation issues that we work for and to help here at Galapagos Conservancy. Giant tortoises, critically endangered waved albatrosses, 211 estimated population of the Pink Land Iguana atop Wolf Volcano. These projects and the ongoing efforts to find a mate for Fernanda, the Fernandina giant tortoise, and all of these projects that we here at GC are involved in with help from Joshua, with help from the Galapagos National Park Directorate, with help from collaborators all across the islands, all across the world, and with help from supporters like you, we can't do what we do and continue to protect the wildlife and the biodiversity, the ecosystems and habitats of the Galapagos without help from supporters and viewers and followers like you. So thank you so much for tuning in today. If you are interested in learning more about our work, please visit galapagos.org to find out about what we're involved in. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter to stay up to date on the latest news and notes from our work down in the islands. And definitely give Joshua a follow on Instagram. And of course, if you do have the ability to do so, please consider donating to us. We are a nonprofit organization who all of our work is funded through grants and donations from viewers and supporters like you. So any help that you are able to send our way, we will certainly use it to help protect, restore, and preserve the Galapagos Archipelago. So Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for talking us through your experiences as a visual storyteller for the Galapagos Archipelago. It means so much that you're willing to share your art and your philosophies and your thinking and your words with us here at GC. I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you and share your art moving forward.
Absolutely, Aaron. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. And thank you to everyone who has tuned in. Again, visit galapagos.org to learn more about what we do. But this has been our latest Field Transmissions episode, and we will be signing off. So thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Bye now.